He's a symbol of reinvention and transcendence with his new podcast, Stoke the Fire. His music just might save or inspire you. He sings, he screams, and he doesn't play nice when it comes to being one of the most influential metal vocalists of our time. Welcome to the show, Jesse Leach, singer of Killswitch Engage. So, Jesse, are we keeping the PMA, yay or nay?
First of all, thanks for the intro. Second of all, yeah, I definitely strive to keep that PMA. I think the misconception is with the PMA thing is you don't have bad days, you don't get grumpy or angry or sad. I do all those things, but I make a real concerted effort to stay positive no matter what and see life through the lens of positivity and beauty, regardless of what the hell's going on. So yeah, keeping the PMA for sure.
I love the way that you talked about that. And it is a kind of stopping yourself before you get too far, before you just lose it. Like, don't let 5 seconds of your day ruin your entire day.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that these days. I'm sure you can attest to, anyone can attest to that. I think between just being conscious of things, being conscious of your breath, breathing deeply is a huge thing, meditation, and just sort of seeing the bigger picture. And it's easy to do that when you live in a beautiful place like I do too. And I think that's something that helps me a lot is my environment up here where I live in the Catskill Mountains. It's huge to my mental health, especially this past year.
Absolutely. And that's funny. You said breathe in, breathe out. We were just having some audio visual issues on my side, or you were saying breathe. And I was like, okay, breathe. Okay.
Yes.
Breathe. There you
go. We forget to do it. The deep diaphragmatic breathing is incredible for your head and for your body and for your mind. I can go off on that because I had to use it recently in a semi-emergency I had in nature, but we can get to that a little bit later.
No, we're getting to it now. That's actually was going to be the first thing I asked. So, number one, I'm like a huge horror movie person. So I love horror movies. Has there ever been anything scary that happened to you in the woods?
Yeah, I think yesterday we had a moment of scariness. I've had a couple, but I think nature constantly teaches you to get better at being, adept in the wilderness. Because I'm one of those people that loves to get lost out in the wilderness. I've had, if I'm going to be real with you, I've had some crazy cryptozoological experiences that I don't talk about very often. I'll stick to just nature in general for now. So yesterday I was on a hike, a pretty normal hike that a lot of the tourists do around here in Woodstock, New York. And it's called Overlook Mountain. There's an old abandoned, burned down hotel ruins up there. It's beautiful. It's super cool. It's creepy. And during the summer, there are rattlesnakes everywhere. So it's like this really crazy place. It's a destination for a lot of people. But in winter, you don't get a lot of people up there. And you can go off trail. You can bushwhack. You can go down to the river there. It gets beautiful. So my girlfriend and I chose to do a trail that you normally need snowshoes for, which means every other step you're falling a foot and a half in the snow, bouncing on the snow, falling in the snow. We kept falling. We were determined to make it down, and we kept going. And I got waist deep in the snow. We hit water. There was a waterfall underneath our feet, like a stream. So we ended up getting our feet really soaked. The temperature change shifted a little bit, and my feet were burning. They were numb. Couldn't feel them. We had to keep stopping. Sun was going down. Temperatures dropping. And we were still miles away from where we needed to be. So yesterday was definitely a stressful day. But thankfully, her and I are kind of students of this guy, Wim Hof, who's a guy who climbed Mount Everest in his shorts.
Wim Hof method.
Wim Hof, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So we did that breathing technique, and actually the numbness started to go away. We started to feel more energized. We were dealing with the cold much better because of his techniques. And it actually helped us with our minds, and we pushed through, and it took us about 3 hours to get out of there, but we did it just as the sun was going down. But there was definitely a moment where I was like hearkening back to like nature programs I've watched, being like, oh, we're going to be those stupid people that the rangers are going to find. We're going to be huddled around some fire in the snow. But I've had a few of those crazy incidences, but they're great teachers when you're out in the wilderness to get better and more adept every time you get out there, because you got to be careful. You can't take it for granted. Nature will definitely keep you in fucking check.
Wow. So that's a better story than I knew I would get. That's really scary.
There's a moment.
For a few moments. I can't believe like your feet were going numb.
Oh yeah, and the burning, and then when you lose feeling, that's when you got to be careful. I mean, you're basically slushing around in ice for hours, so you had to keep stopping, wringing my socks out. Yeah, it sucked. It sucked.
Wow.
But lesson learned: you wear your snowshoes on deeper trails. Don't go down that way. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, definitely felt a
Wow.
little foolish out there because I try to be, fairly good with nature scenarios. I've been going out and hiking for most of my life, but yeah, yesterday was kind of a dumb, cocky move on my part, and yeah, my girlfriend was like, "Why did we do that?" Whoops.
We're still alive. So have you been watching any nature shows during quarantine?
I watch nature shows on a regular basis. Sometimes when I have trouble falling asleep, I go from nature programs. David Attenborough, who's a British naturalist, is probably one of my favorite voices on the planet. In any show that he narrates, he puts me to sleep. He's in a good way. I absolutely love him because I've watched his specials. Like the Blue Planet and not Mother Earth. What the hell is it called?
Blue Earth?
Yeah, Blue Earth. They just all of his stuff. I've seen all of it so many times that I just put it on and it's just like a happy place. But I'm obsessed with that. I'm obsessed with alien documentaries and Sasquatch documentaries. Those are kind of my big three. Ancient Aliens. I love that show. I don't believe everything, but I love it. It's just entertaining. And yeah, I have my definite beliefs in Sasquatch, which is another topic completely.
So I know you want to save most of that for your podcast, but
Ah,
is the Sasquatch the
yeah,
cryptozoology
definitely.
thing that
Yeah.
you were talking about?
Yeah, I've had about 5 experiences that make me truly consider the idea. I've never seen it with my eyes, but all the experiences you hear about the tossing of stones, the smells, the noises, the gibberish, the wood knocking. I've gotten rattled in my tent. Um, I've gotten harassed out in the desert by something. I've had these crazy experiences that I cannot explain. And then I've heard detailed accounts from other people on countless podcasts and documentaries that all match up to what happened to me. So it just kind of makes me feel like, yeah, there's a really good possibility that we as humans don't know everything in nature. And there's possibly an undiscovered thing or things, species out there that is smart enough to avoid detection, smart enough not to leave a trace, occasional footprint. But yeah, I've had some crazy experiences that make me a believer, in short.
This is really exciting because I haven't talked about a lot of this with other musicians, and I really love talking about it. It's a huge interest of mine.
Yeah.
So, do you believe in paranormal things as well?
I grew up in a haunted house and my dad was a minister. So absolutely 100% believe in the spirit world, the light side of it and the dark side of it. I've seen both, I've experienced both. I've got stories that will make the hair stand up on people's arms and backs for sure.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very
It's a blessing and a curse though, isn't it? To be aware of that shit. Sometimes I'm envious of people who don't believe and they're just like, whatever. And I'm like, dude, no.
Oh, I was in a hair salon getting my hair done, and there's this guy next to me in a chair, and who's like, "Oh, I know. I just really wish I could experience something. I just really wish." And I had a hair salon moment where I was like, "Darling,
Yeah.
no, don't invite anything in. What are you doing? Stop it."
Yeah, that's the thing, you always hear about. And I feel like a lot of people's stories start with, I was playing with the Ouija board. I'm like, oh, hell no, you weren't. Come on, man.
No, I have a girlfriend who didn't believe in Ouija, and she wanted to get it as decoration for her house. And I was like, I'll never come over.
Yeah,
I'll never come over to your house ever.
I know. It's crazy. Yeah, I'm a musician, but especially this past year and a half or so, I've just explored a whole other, just being home and sort of getting comfortable in my own skin, staying still. Because when you're on the go and the interviews I'm so used to are so centered around an album or a tour, and now I'm just kind of like becoming more comfortable not talking about music and just talking about all the other stuff. I don't know. It's fun. It's fun for me. I talk about music all the time, which is, don't get me wrong, I still love to talk about music, but if I have the opportunity to sneak in some other stuff, I love it. It's great, especially anything, like we're talking about right now. This is the shit I love to talk about.
I love that. That's actually huge. Yeah, I said it's a huge interest of mine. Like the other podcasts I listen to are paranormal and they're true crime and they're, bitchy witchy things like that. So
Yeah, it's
it's a
great.
huge interest of mine as well.
Totally, man. I love all that shit. There's a podcast called Lore that I love to listen to. It's all old folklore. And there's one called Spooked that I love. That's like the people who've experienced the hauntings or whatever tell the stories themselves. You get to hear the emotion in their voice, and they have kind of sound effects here and there. I love all that shit. I sometimes I don't even listen to music. I'll just put that kind of stuff on podcasts and just listen to it while I do shit around the house. I love it.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, like when you listen to too many podcasts, like during quarantine, my house is nothing but Italian art. I have my
Nice.
dogs and like my girlfriends, but I needed some male energy. So I listened to History Hyenas because it was just like dude, man, bro energy. And I hadn't been around men in so long. And I was like,
Funny.
they're like, I needed the fart jokes and I needed like the football talk and like the De Niro talk or whatever. It was just like male energy.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny what you miss, though. You're right. During quarantine, is human interaction, the shit I used to take for granted, and sometimes the shit I would avoid because I was pretty much a semi-hermit on tour. Like days off, I'll just spend by myself. But now, like I'm just dying for any sort of interaction. Thankfully, up here where we live, it's still socially distanced, but you can go to a bar and sit at a bar and listen to people talk and laugh, and you're still distanced from it. But that's one of my favorite things to do. And I don't even drink that much anymore. I just like sitting at the bar and just being in that atmosphere because it feels so nice now that it was just gone for so long. Just hearing people laugh in the distance in the restaurant is like, I love it.
And it's not a soundtrack. It's like, it's real people.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Actual people. I know this year's been so nuts, man. I know.
Yeah. Well, there's one venue here I've talked about, and it's Come and Take It Live. And they've actually been having shows. So it's not like the big ones on the tours, but like really good local bands. And like
awesome.
Last weekend and a half, I got a notification that the venue was going live. And I was like, what? Is there a show going on? And I freaked out, got dressed, and I only caught one song. But there was a whole metal show that I missed. And I got one song in. But
that's right. Texas. That's right. You guys are like already doing it. That's great. Yeah, good for you, man. I miss all that shit so much.
Yeah. They're like Blacktop Mojo. They're a band here. They've been playing.
My girlfriend's a massive, massive fan of that band.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. How funny.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Do they know who she is? Are they friends?
I don't know. I think she dated one of them at one point.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I don't know I could get my story incorrect and she'll kill me, but she's a massive fan of those guys. I hear in the car every once in a while, she'll play a couple songs by them. That dude can sing. Damn. Soulful motherfucker. Yeah, that dude can sing. He can wail. He's a really good singer.
Yeah, I always loved the first interview I ever did with him. It was so funny. I asked that, that question of, guys, I know it's so hard just staying out on the road and, just going from town to town, it can really wear on you. And he was like, what? Are you kidding me? I love it. What are you talking about? This is my dream. And it was very funny because artists and musicians talk about it a lot, like, hey, I miss this and what you miss out on. And it was funny for me as an interviewer, just someone isolate that and be like, are you out of your mind? What are you talking about? This is what I live for.
Yeah, there's a lot of people like that. And it's funny, I definitely used to be 100% like that. But now, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little torn. I've actually really enjoyed just being a sort of normal town person here. I've never really had that opportunity in the past 10 years. So like, at first I was not comfortable in it. I was very sort of anxious to get back on the road and do what I do and like feed that buzz that keeps you going on tour. But man, I really flipped the switch. Life slowed down and I slowed down. Sort of took a deep breath and reassessed my life. And yeah, I'm in like the best mental state I've ever been in my life right now. And I'm like in love with somebody who's amazing after coming out of a pretty toxic relationship. Like my life is good. The only thing missing is the music. But when I start touring again, I'm going to miss home. It's like a whole new thing. It's crazy, man. But balance is key. So, and Killswitch is getting up there in age. So I'm sure we'll be probably not touring as much as we have in the past. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know. There's so many bands that they're still doing it. I mean,
yeah, we love it. We're still going, but yeah,
a
couple of guys in the band, and now myself included, just need a little balance because there was a time where we were just hitting the road hard for a long time, just getting burnt the fuck out. And then, I had my vocal surgery, which slowed me down for a while. But then from that point on, once I got the surgery, we opened for Iron Maiden, and like life just went, we toured nonstop again after that.
Real big, real quick, real fast.
Yeah. The shit was amazing though.
Yeah. So real quick before we move on, because I would kick myself if I didn't ask, what are a few stories growing up for you in the haunted house? Let's be funny. Let's be paranormal. Like we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm into it. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So yeah, my entire life from an early age, I would see apparitions. I would experience things. I'd feel stuff crawling on my bed. I would, have sleep paralysis. And my father being, a minister, being around spiritual energy of churches and people, there's a lot of stuff that goes on when you have people who are desperate to change their lives. And, we always had anywhere from like a drug addict to an ex-con to homeless families in our house. My parents were very welcoming. They took the sort of golden rule very to heart, word for word. So do unto others as you'd have done unto you, which created a really positive thing. But with that, you get different energies that shift. And I think it really all peaked when we moved into my grandparents' old house after my grandmother passed away and my grandfather got sick and moved down to Florida. So we moved into that house. And that house is built in 1920. Two of my family members have passed away, and then my great uncle and my grandmother. So there's already sort of a history of death there. But the crazy thing about that house was it wasn't the friendly sort of, oh, that's my grandmother, familiar spirit, like good feeling vibe kind of spiritual energy. There was some dark shit going on in that house. All right, so here's probably the best one I've got. My little sister, who was 4 at the time, was playing outside in the yard, and my dad and I were working on the foundation of the house. They were getting ready to move to Indiana. My dad was going to continue his studies because he's got 2 master's degrees, and he's working on his PhD. The guy is a walking encyclopedia of theological information. So they were getting ready to move and leave me the house. This is right around when Killswitch started. And we actually recorded parts of Alive or Just Breathing in this house, in this particular room. That's like crazy. So my sister's out playing in the yard. My dad and I are around the house, and my sister comes up to me. When you just feel someone staring at you, and I'm like, my back is to her, and I turn around and I look at her, and she's just staring at me straight in the face. And she says, Sally comes down from the attic at night, and she plays with me. But when she gets mad, she hisses at me. And I was like, ugh. I felt the hairs in the back of my neck stand up, and I'm like, okay, so my parents and my sister are getting ready to leave me the house like in a couple days. And this is the thing my little sister says to me, because, kids, they have no filter. She just decided to tell me this. And I'm like, what did you just say? So she repeats herself. I get up immediately, just kind of like in shock. And I go over to my dad, and I'm like, so this happens? And he's like, oh yeah, Sally. Yeah. Your sister sees this old woman that comes down from the attic, and he's being very casual about it, very dismissive. And I'm like, why, what? Why did you not tell me this? He's like, yeah, I went in her room at 3 a.m. the other night, and there was an indentation on the bed, and she had a board game out, and she was talking. So that was the exit of my parents and the entrance to me sort of living there by myself and having roommates. So this would lead to seeing a woman coming down from the stairs late at night, having my collar, my belt buckle pulled when I tried to walk up the stairs. The ceiling fans would spin and stop. The keys would jingle. We'd hear disembodied voices. We had a New Year's party. It was 120 people, 4 bands at this place, packed house. And at one point in the party, we're all hanging out in the living room, and people heard the disembodied voices I hear all the time. And people were like, what was that? I was like, yeah, welcome to the house. So I just, you name it, it's happened. Hundreds of dead black flies in the attic, because the attic was a place of dark energy. You'd go up there and like the windows would be covered in dead black flies. Like it's, yeah. We could
like a Netflix movie.
Right. We could do an entire podcast on just that house. And I still, to this day, even this past week, constantly dream of that house. Whenever I'm stressed or feeling anxious or like something's going on in my life that's not right, or just subconsciously that house pops up. The house itself, doesn't matter what dream I'm in, I'm like, I know I'm in the house again. Freaks me out.
Your dreams, like the fact that you dream about it and it pops up, that's huge.
And I haven't lived in that house since 2006. Yeah.
Wow. Have you ever visited a medium or anything about interactions?
I have, and I've got friends. I actually spoke to a shaman about it, and he told me that I have an old woman that follows me, and I have a hawk that sits on my shoulder and is my spirit guide, hence the red-tailed hawk that I now have, and I completely embraced. I don't know about the old woman yet. I haven't met her, but I did a vision quest, and I fasted and did psychedelics and went into the spirit world. People are going to think I'm nuts. It's totally fine. And I discovered my path and sort of changed my whole life. And ever since then, I've been on a different path and have seen the world through completely different eyes. And that's because of talking to a shaman and being around people who are gifted.
Mm-hmm. So was that like an ayahuasca experience?
No, that was mushrooms on a very empty stomach, a couple of days of fasting and eating only mushrooms and going out into the woods by myself. It was during a very transitional time in my life when I was still in a pretty toxic relationship, seeking answers and trying to figure out who I was and seeking protection from my heart. And that's this profound thing happened to me out there. And ever since then, I don't know, things have changed. It's been incredible since then. My eyes were opened.
Wow. I feel very warm and glowy listening to you talk about being in a different realm and
it's
coming back and
everybody,
bringing something back, right?
Yeah, it's important. You have to be humble enough and willing to do that. I think anyone can do that. I think we live in a world where it's the antithesis of that. We live in such a distracted, social media driven, bickering, division world where you're in a city, you can't even see the stars above your head. Like, we've just so out of touch with how we're supposed to be living. So experiences like that led me to finally move out of the city and go to the place where I used to find refuge, and that's up here. And now I live where I used to vacation after a tour, or a day if I'm feeling like screwed up, I would get in my car and just drive up here from Brooklyn and just be up here. So now living up here is I knew this was supposed to happen. I was pulled up here by a force.
Well, I can't wait to watch you. I mean, everything you do from here, right? It's kind of, as someone who has that type of
pressure.
That's actually really funny. No, but someone who has that enlightened state of mind, it's confidence to do what you're meant to do, and it's confirmation, confidence, and having enough love for yourself to want to,
that came with a lot of work,
really what you want and not what anyone else wants you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that came with a lifestyle change, a diet change, everything. I've changed everything, and it's been incredible. But yeah, I think you're right. It's self-love. And that's something that's really hard for some people, including myself. It was a good chunk of time where I didn't have enough of it. And I was allowing people to step all over me and abuse me, honestly. Mm-hmm. Being a very empathetic person as well. So yeah, learning to set boundaries, learning to give yourself the benefit of the doubt. But it's a work in progress. I'm by no means a sort of holy man, or I don't have all the answers. I think it's about being open and about being willing to grow and continue to change and progress as a human. And part of that is just killing the ego. I think that's so important, and that's why I love psychedelic rituals. If you read into microdosing, all these things that people are now, it's all over the internet. It's a hashtag, but legitimately that stuff changed my life. And it's not something I do on the regular basis anymore, but there was a time where I needed that to deal with my anxiety and my depression and suicidal thoughts years ago. And through therapy, therapists, friends, spiritual leaders, and that kind of experience, it just shifted me. And I learned that the ego has to die. You have to find humility. Once you find true humility, that's when you start to figure out who you are and find that self-love. It's a total journey. It's something we'll do until the day we die if you're open to it,
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking about this the other day with someone. And it's funny when you're dating, like I'm probably the happiest person I've ever been in my entire life now. And I'm dating, and it's kind of funny because we all look for something deep, and we ask for it, and we're like, oh, I want to meet someone here and there. But it's really like kind of risking your happiness that you've worked on, and like, I'm good, I'm great. I put myself back together again from a really bad relationship myself.
Yeah.
And then now I'm good. And now I'm like dating again. That's like, you know what I mean? It's kind of funny. Like when you're in love with someone like so deeply, it kind of changes you and like to the depths of where it can go. And then coming back from that's kind of interesting. Like, okay, I'm dating again. I'd like to find someone, but if I do, wow, it's kind of funny that I risk this happiness that I've built and like put back together because you're, offering someone else up your happiness.
Yeah, it's true. But if you find the right person, it goes both ways, which, for many, many years of my life, I didn't have that. And now I have a partner she's like the iron sharpening iron. And it's rare to find that. Trust me. And it took us a while to get there. When we first met, we were both kind of not in a good spot, but it does exist. There are people that can help you. And like, she's my best friend. And like, that's rare too. You hear relationships, marriages, whatever, people like, and there's always that out of the side of the mouth, like, this, so-and-so, and things are good, but goddamn. And like with her, she's been like a life coach for me. She's been great. And vice versa. We sort of fill in the gaps where she's got stuff to work on. I'm pretty strong in that aspect. I grew up in a very sort of solid home with, parents that loved each other and taught me the value of certain things. She grew up in a really broken home. So she's very much a mental warrior. So she was able to like help strengthen the parts of my brain that we're not used to dealing with trauma and, with confrontation. I've never been good with confrontation. I've always shied away from it. I'd rather just say yes to you, to make you happy and then not have to deal with confrontation. And she's the type of person that's like, don't yes me. Let's talk, but like, talk to me about what you want. Don't just say yes. Cause for most of my life I did. So yeah, we've been good for each other. It's been great. But yeah, you have to be careful who you invest your energy in. And that's a huge thing. Like you're saying, you're like in a good place now. You don't want someone to come along and fuck it up. So you got to be careful. You got to have your defenses up. Yeah. I mean, shit, that's how life is. It's just a constant lesson. And unfortunately, a lot of people, and I'm sure you know them too, like they're not okay. They let people shit on them. Like I know people in abusive relationships. I'm like, they're just stuck. They can't get out of it. And like, as an outsider, you're like, what's wrong with you? But when you're in it, sometimes you don't realize how bad it was, and like, that's when you pull out of those situations. I'm sure you can attest to this too. You look back, you're like, how did I put up with that shit? Mm-hmm. It's crazy, man.
So is that how I got you on the podcast? You're afraid of confrontation?
Oh, no. I'm just happy to talk to people, man. I've been doing like a lot of press for the podcast, and then for Times of Grace, which I really don't have much to say because I don't have any updates, but I don't say no anymore to interviews. I used to say no to a lot of stuff, but now like I'm just trying to fill my time talking. I think it's good. It's just good practice, social skills. It's good just to talk to people and stay open. And besides, you have friends in common, and you came at me through the Headbangers Con kind of angle. I was like, yeah, hell yeah.
Hey, hi.
You have a good rep. So, yeah, I think it's good to just start socializing again, start getting used to this kind of stuff, because I truly believe we are going to see some changes this year as far as our social environment. You're already seeing it in Texas. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good to practice it, because for a while I was walking out of the house and freaking people out by the way I was smiling at them, because I hadn't seen anyone in so long. I was just all smiles and I was freaking people out, man. Weird. It's a little weird. Like practicing is good.
Yeah, I can't wait to see people's faces without masks on.
I know, right? Yeah, very much.
Crazy.
Yeah, so one cool thing you can do in the woods is reflect and light a fire. So let's talk Stoke the Fire podcast.
Yes. So Stoke the Fire podcast was born out of an idea of the kind of things you talk about when you sit around a fire, the way humans interact around a fire. The way you can see a shift in people. Like if you've ever sat around a fire with a group of people, something happens there. There's kind of a magic there. Even if you're in party mode, it gets to this point where people just want to talk. They want to have interactions. It's this whole thing. So Matt Stocks, my partner on the podcast, who's been podcasting with his podcast called Life in the Stock. Yeah. And he's really good at it. He's really good at interviewing and having a conversation. He's a good conversationalist. So I've been a fan of his for years now, and he's interviewed me a few times. And we did this live Q&A thing in Birmingham, England, where we had a room full of people. I kind of just, talked about my life with him sort of guiding me. We took questions and answers. It was a good 2 hours or so. And I left that event in the back of my mind going, that was powerful. The interaction I had with my audience without a band, without, sort of just not going through the motions, but having a song to sort of hide behind, and having to really say what I think and feel. I realized that that's an important thing for me as an artist, because I do have a lot to share, and my lyrics have helped people, but I feel like the way that I live my life and the way that I see the world can help people as well. So it was a whole thing that just happened to me, and Matt and I kept in contact. We became really good friends that night. We stayed up till 5 a.m, just talking life, and we hit it off and became good friends at that point. So that relationship developed over the years, and he pitched it to me one day. He's like, hey, what do you think of joining me? We'll do this sort of tribute to Joe Strummer from The Clash, who was one of my favorite vocalists. I have him tattooed on my arm right there. And he used to do this thing at the Glastonbury Festival where he would light a fire and invite artists around to sit around a fire and talk. And I always thought that was such a brilliant idea. Take the microphones away, take the cameras away, take all the flash of press away, and just sit around a fire and be a human with another artist, and the beautiful things that will come out of that. So yeah, we just launched that and wanted to be that type of a podcast where you feel comfortable. You're just hanging out with us, and we're talking about the real shit, going deep on stuff. We've already got a couple of guests lined up that are awesome. One in particular you will like, because you like the haunted stuff. So it's just a passion project that just took off, and Gas Digital got behind it, and now we're official. We're a show, and I couldn't be happier. And when the world gets back to a more social environment, the plan is to take it on the road, to actually light a fire, to have people sit around the fire, to throw mini festivals, to have DJs, to have performers, make it a huge thing, not just a show. But this is the groundwork we're laying, and it feels great. I love it. It just feels right. It's a nice progression for me in my career.
I love that. So I didn't know the origin story of that was backstage, just lighting a fire and having people sit around it. That's cool. It reminds me of after show parties.
Totally. Yeah. People just, letting it all hang out and just being, and Joe Strummer had a way to do that. If you watch, there's a documentary about him, and every time I do this, I always forget the stupid name of it. It's not West Way to the World, but there's a documentary on Joe Strummer about his life after The Clash. So The Clash was a huge band, playing Shea Stadium, sold out nights in a row, going from that to being Joe Strummer without The Clash. And it's his journey trying to find his footing, the way he carried himself, flyering for his own shows on the boardwalk to younger kids that didn't know who he was, going to music festivals, electronic music festivals, trying to understand the new trend of what the youth were all about. This guy who was a multinational superstar never changed. He just carried himself the same way as he did in the 70s up until the day he died. And all of the people that I know that spent time with him said he was just a humble guy. What you see is what you got. And to me, that's inspiring. I aspire to be that way, because I hate the rock star thing. I really do. I think it's so stupid and overplayed. This lavish lifestyle, which doesn't even really exist for most people in my genre of music. We're not rich people. People pretend. I've never been in love with the pretending to be something that I'm not, or thinking that I'm better than. And Joe is a great example of that.
Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of rock star mentality. I think
there was at one point in the 90s.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. Yeah.
That was kind of the last wave of it, if you think about it. It was the 90s into the early 2000s.
So talking about mental health, you share the message of therapy and, being okay, not being okay. What's the most impactful thing that a therapist ever told you?
I think the most impactful thing said to me was, Learn to love yourself more. You're not giving yourself enough credit. And admit when you're not doing okay and ask for help. Speak, like, use your voice to speak aloud and say that you're not okay. Say that you need help. And it's still something I have to work on, of just like when I'm feeling something, to say it. I'm so used to holding on to it and digesting it and shoving it down and trying to figure it out. And it manifests itself in so many different ways, whether it's, being angry, or, turning towards alcohol and drugs to numb it or run from it. And just, that's a process that, because I've been told by wise people, and, they probably said it better than I'm saying it now, but the message got to me. It was like, admit to yourself that you're not okay and start talking about it. And the more I started to talk about it, the more people I met along the way, I gained wisdom from them, and then vice versa. It's a two-way street. And I started meeting all these people who were just like me, that had to deal with anxiety and depression and dependency on substances sometimes, to like just get out of your own head. And it was really empowering and eye-opening to be humble enough to say that. It's so frowned upon, and it's still a stigma. There's still people that will scoff and make fun of people when they talk about their mental health, and there's that whole attitude of like, suck it up and like, just get over it. What are you talking about? When you realize that it's not just you're not just sad. It's actually much deeper than that. It goes to the chemical level. You're talking about disorders of the brain, and meeting people who are the same as me, and that it was a chain reaction of just opening my eyes and being awakened. It was because somebody just had me stay still and made me realize that, I was going through something and I needed to talk. So I would say that's probably the most important thing. Talk about it, be about it, own it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you said it was really deep and it's really chemical. If you were to describe anxiety or depression to someone who is trying to understand someone in their life who has it, how would you say it feels for you? Like, what does it feel like?
Yeah. So depression, thankfully for me, has gotten a lot easier to deal with. But in the past, it was something that I would get angry. So here's another thing that people don't realize. Those two things are connected. Anxiety and depression are very connected, and anxiety manifests in very different ways, through insecurities, through all kinds of things. It's not just what you think it is on paper. There's a whole, just how metal has all these subgenres. There's all these subgenres of anxiety and depression. And depression feels like a blanket, like a really heavy, heavy blanket on you, like an albatross on your shoulders that you just can't shake, and you don't know why. And you get frustrated, you get angry because you feel like you should be better than that. You feel like you shouldn't be sad. You feel like, oh, I need to get out of bed. I need to do something. It's a lot of like, at least for me, I beat myself up a lot when I get depressed. And in reality, you have to allow the process to happen, but you also gain tools to like work to get out of it. You work to prevent it. There's a lot you can do, but it's a horrible feeling. And then you feel like people around you who don't understand, they're like, why can't you just snap out of it? Why are you always bummed out? Like, all that shit just kills you because you can't shake it. It's something you can't describe. It is an imbalance of chemicals. And anxiety to me feels like I'm being choked out. Like it feels like you can't breathe. And no matter what you do, I mean, I've paced around. I've gone through like long walks. I've gone on bike ride, anything to just get my blood going and try to like feel like I'm coming out of this panicky, like suffocating feeling. It's horrible. It's scary. You get scared. It almost feels like you're dying. If you get a really bad panic attack, you can think you're dying. And my girlfriend's actually suffered enough where she actually rushed herself to the hospital, got into an ambulance and got there. And they were like, you just had a panic attack. She thought she was having a heart attack. So people who don't know, who don't experience these things, don't realize how incredibly hard they are to deal with and how the brain controls everything else. So if this is off, it manifests itself actually physically, and you can physically get sick from anxiety, depression. You can have disorders. You can have gut issues. The trickle down effect to mental illness is astronomical. And some people who have physical ailments don't even realize they have anxiety. Most people don't even know. They don't even know how to put, oh, I have depression. I have anxiety. I am bipolar. And getting the wisdom to say that and to realize what it is a game changer, because there was a point where I realized it. I didn't know that I had anxiety, but I used to always freak out about these crazy things. I'd break out in hives. I always had issues when I was a kid, and I couldn't figure out what it was. But all that being said, there's a lot you can do between exercise and diet and breathing exercises and going to therapy and talking about it. All of these things really help you gain tools. So when you're triggered or something happens and you feel yourself spiraling, there's things you can do to sort of slow that process or break out of that process. And that's been huge for me.
If this isn't what you're meant to do, and if you are the person that is supposed to help people, I don't know what else, right?
I'm working on it, man. I don't know. I realize there's power to it, but I've got a lot to learn too. So I feel like the more that I talk to people and the more I learn, I just find it easier to share, and I'm not afraid to say it. And I think that's it too. Like, a lot of people have wisdom on this subject, but they're just unwilling or afraid to talk about it. And to me, like, I don't care what people think anymore. I just don't. I don't care. And I know I'm helping people, so be it.
Sometimes I think you go throughout life and you think about different things. Like, if I'm thinking about something where I was able to help someone, it's like, wow, if you can help one person, that is so rewarding.
Yeah.
And you're able to help so many people. But that's like, do you know how big of a deal that is if you can just help one person?
Yeah, indeed. And I think that's where it started for me, was hearing about my lyrics. People, that's the one thing, regardless of whether or not you're a fan of my voice or the band, which, I get it. It's not for everybody. The one thing I definitely hold close to my heart is my lyrics, because I work so hard at them. And I know they have affected people. I've seen them tattooed on their skin, and people write me on a pretty fairly regular basis about the impact that my words have had. So I just figured, like, that's the least I can do is take that part of my gift, which is writing and sort of talking about my emotions or the spiritual world or whatever you get out of my lyrics, and applying that to just, the podcast or just everyday stuff, doing interviews about it, talking to people who run suicide prevention agencies or organizations. Like, I don't say no to that stuff because I know it's important work. So yeah, maybe this is a nice new path for me to go on. I feel really comfortable in it. So we'll see what the future holds.
Absolutely. And I did want to share one app I've been using. Not a plug, but I started using the Headway app.
Yes.
Have you heard of it?
Yeah. There's
it has so many books on there that I've been meaning to read that. I've been wanting to read that, and it has so many great mental health books on there, and it's just like cliff notes for these books, and it just tells you like, oh, do you have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and it reads it to you in a monotone voice. And I think that's so huge. And that's my favorite one off of that was the 5-second rule of isolating when, okay, I'm feeling this, stop, isolating it right there and stopping it right there and just taking 5 seconds. Okay. In 5 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I'm going to go somewhere else with it. Okay. I'm going to do something completely different with it. And that really helped me out a lot.
It's something that's so simple, but it's huge. It's being self-aware and learning your trigger points and learning when you're starting to feel a certain way. There's a lot to be shared. There's a lot of wisdom, and I use breathing techniques. That's a huge thing for me, is breathing. Like, if you change your rhythmic breathing, it actually, the brain will follow. It actually works. It's crazy, and also just fixating on something that's causing the anxiety. Because that's a huge thing for me. It's a daily thing, but little bits of wisdom like that are great. Yeah, it's a head space, I think, is the breathing.
What?
I think it's the breathing one. There's the one you're talking about. Then there's one that's just for breathing and meditation. I think it's Headspace. Yeah. So
you're right.
Yeah, so they're sort of like the two that have really helped for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got so lost.
Good. No, that's just.
Do we want to talk about it? Like, do we want to talk about other things?
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's really good.
You were right. We took a breath and then we move on to the next thing.
And then we breathe.
Mm-hmm.
We take it in. Oh, I have something I want to ask. And I don't know. Yeah, I'll just ask this because I listened to you in another interview where it's one of the Killswitch songs. I don't remember which one, but you said it was the beginning of your suicide note. What song was that?
Yeah, it was Times of Grace, The End of Days. Ironically enough, the title of the song gives it away. Yeah, so the first couple lines of that, when Adam starts the vocals, like a withered tree in winter's hold, that was how I started my little suicide note when I was sitting underneath the tree in autumn and watching the leaves fall and just envisioning myself as being one of those leaves and sort of I've always had this all through my childhood and just had this sort of romantic idea of like death and suicide and the peace and the calm. Like I used to spend time in graveyards when I was younger, very gothy, sort of really into death metal too. I went through phases, but I've always sort of romanticized the idea of death. And I had that moment sitting there just wanting the peace of death because I was having such anxiety and such depression and it was just in such a dark place um, that the only thing I could think of was taking myself out. So I would just write about it. And yeah, that song is portions of that note woven in between Adam and I, sort of like navigating how to make it a song. Yeah.
Is it hard for you to sing that?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't really play that song too much live. And that's another thing too, like Times of Grace kind of came and went. So those songs are really heavy and near and dear to my heart, but we only did a few tours. And I think I was just too nervous about how to sing right then to really be present in some of those songs because I had such a shit voice back then. I was really trying to figure out who I was as a singer because Times of Grace was the first band I went back on tour with and like tried to sing coming from like, you know, being off the road for years and just working a job. But that being good.
Oh, sorry. No, what were you saying?
I was going to say, that being said, the new Times of Grace is just, I think, far superior to the first record. And that album is going to be super hard to sing live emotionally because it's really deep as well. That's just how Times of Grace is. Times of Grace is just the deepest shit, man.
So what 3 songs do we start with for people who haven't listened to Times of Grace yet?
Well, my favorite's going to be different from most people, I would say. Yeah, let's go.
Looking for your perspective for sure.
Yeah, let's go. Well, End of Days you already mentioned, so I think that's a good starting point. End of Eternity is another great one off that record, I think. And both of those tend to be a little more diverse and less, you know, what people would know as like the Killswitch sound. I think those songs really show a departure and creativity between Adam and I love that. I love pushing the boundaries and pulling away from what people know us for. So those two off the top of my head. And then on that record, what else? The hell's the name of that song? Give me a second. I'm drawing a blank. Oh, Where the Spirit Leads Me. I love that because it's very sort of, I'm using a lot more yelling in that. I love to bring in more yelling and instead of just screaming and doing the normal sort of vocals that I'm known for. Times of Grace, I feel, was the first band where I was like, oh, I'm going to yell this part instead of scream it. And that one has some good yelling in it. I really dig it. And the new record does too. I like switching it up because to me, like doing the same style of vocals that I do in Killswitch, it's kind of redundant. So we made a real effort to bring out different styles and different feels with Times of Grace.
Nice. And you said there's a new album. I didn't know about that. When is it coming out?
Yeah, we signed contracts about a week ago. The album is done. It's mixed. It's mastered. The artwork is done. The first video is shot. We're like locked and loaded. We're just waiting for the green light. We did a nice deal with a distribution company. So we're doing everything ourselves, but we have help from a pretty amazing team of people. So to be audio visual as well, you're going to see a lot of visuals online and really cool artwork. And it's very different. And we're purposely making it very sort of non-metal. It's purposely pushed to, you know, you're going to hear stuff you're familiar with, but there's also going to be more mellow stuff, more rock stuff. We're really just trying to carve our own niche and our own, you know, make Times of Grace its separate thing. And I couldn't be more proud of it. I'm super stoked for that record to come out. So hopefully spring of this year. That's what I keep hearing.
Nice. There you go. Well, we're already kind of in spring right now, so not too much longer.
I don't know. We'll see. It's been a long time coming, man. Years waiting for this shit to happen.
I know. It's been years since the pandemic happened, since we've had more music and shows and everything.
Feels like a lifetime, man.
It's weird, and it's funny for my brand. Like the payoff for everything I do is the show. So like I have fun doing interviews, and it feels so good to do like Instagram lives and things like that with people. Yeah. It feels like I'm hanging out with people at a bar at a show. So that's really fun for me. But like the payoff is the show.
Yeah.
That's what it's all for.
Yeah.
But talking about not doing metal, I do love metal, and I do love the Killswitch sound as well. What are some of your favorite tracks off of Atonement, if you had to pick?
Us Against the World, I think, is probably one of my favorites on that record. It's just the melody.
Is that you and your girlfriend?
No, it's not, but it could be now. I wrote it before I met her, but it definitely could be now. She's definitely my ride or die.
You guys survived the snow.
Yeah. Yes. It got pretty intense up here. But I like it. See, I'm glad spring is coming and it's beautiful. The change of seasons are so important, though, I think. And winter was a little rough, but there was also moments of pure magic looking out the window at the forest and watching the snowfall, and it's quiet and you see deer grazing. Come on, it's beautiful. It ain't so bad. So yeah, I'd say Us Against the World would be probably one of my favorites off that. Take Control, or is it Control? I'm so bad, I don't even know the titles of my own songs. That one's about anxiety, and it's definitely more of a heavy metal rock sounding song on the record. And I love that, and it's in a different tuning. I just love the different shit, Don't get me wrong. I love our meat and potatoes Killswitch sound that we have going on, but when we deviate, I think that's where we shine. And unfortunately, a lot of those songs don't make it into the set because we're pretty rigid about how we perform our sets. At least the four other guys are. But I'm always pushing for the different shit. So, Us Against the World, Take Control, and what would be another one for me? I think Know Your Enemy, because lyrically I think it's very poignant and relative to where we are right now and society with our government and everything that's been going on, because I do believe truly that the mainstream media has become an enemy of the people, and it's with a horrible state that we're living in, and people are just, it's so divisive and so misleading, and information and false information, and I think mainstream media is a detriment to people's headspace and learning what's actually truth and what's not. So that song to me will be timeless. I think there's corruption and power everywhere across the world, and that's kind of, I slip those protest songs in poetically here and there in the Killswitch records, but it's something that I feel very strongly about. I just don't talk about it much because I'm not a political leader or a politician, but I'm a punk rocker, and I definitely think the system is fucked.
That's funny. Yeah, it's funny talking to the Mohawk guy. And I'm a punk rocker, and it's fucked.
Yeah, well, that's still who I am very much deep down inside. As much as I've, achieved sort of a very peaceful way, then I've become sort of a woodsman up here. I'm deep down inside, I'm still a punk rocker with my middle finger extended to society, and still very angry, but I've learned to sort of balance it out.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing I did want to mention, that's kind of funny talking about it. Like you say, talk about it. So one thing I forgot to say that I want to say that's really funny about anxiety. I started dealing with anxiety about 1.5 years ago, and I did a really good job. I was talking to a friend, and there's this new girlfriend in the industry, and I was shit talking myself to her, and she thinks I'm fucking wonderful. And she thinks I'm like the best thing in the entire world. And there I was like, downplaying my talent and saying, oh, you think I'm great. I'm not that great. And then I was like, what am I doing? Stupid idiot. Stop it. Like, what in the world are you doing? It was really detrimental. So I was like, I'm done. So I was done for like 3-4 months. Didn't have like an anxiety attack for like 3-4 months. And then I had one, and it was funny. I had an anxiety attack because I did a good job at hosting.
Wow.
It's so funny to me. Like, some And just kind of talking about and understanding anxiety, I sometimes get panic attacks after I finish a job or like finish a hosting job, excuse me,
Yeah.
hosting gig or an interview, and I'll kill it. And then I'll have an anxiety attack, which is backwards. Like
But it's
you did
crazy though,
great.
right?
Now, no, yeah, it's so weird because a lot of times when I get anxiety, it is, okay, you killed it. Now go have an anxiety attack. And that's completely like, it makes no sense.
Yeah, it manifests in so many different ways. I mean, I'm still learning. I'm still learning about it. It you know, sort of self-esteem issues and like all kinds of shit, man. It's nuts. Like,
Yeah.
you know, downplaying your talents. That's a form of anxiety. It is. It is. It's crazy. But you know, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that. Like it runs deep, and that's why it's good to just study the subject and figure it out and talk to people. That's huge. It's huge. So yeah, I know what you're saying. I've done that. I've gotten off stage at like huge shows and like went into full like can't breathe. And back then I used to just take a bunch of shots and I was fine.
Yeah.
But learning to deal with it without all that shit is a whole other ball game. And it's been incredible. Very eye-opening.
Well, it's funny, you know, I have my cocktail here.
There you go.
I haven't needed it so far, but you know, it's what I'm doing a little bit, like having a drink.
Especially in a social environment, it's so easy just to keep doing this. But yeah, I'm not sober. I just I've cut way back. I kind of had to for my health, but the side effect is my mental health has never been better. Alcohol, I think, really was one of my triggers that would fuck me up and make me depressed. I mean, it is a depressant. It can relax you, and then the more you have, the worse it gets. So I'm trying to like where I'm at now. If I go out, I'll have a glass of wine and maybe a drink after, and then I stop, which I never ever used to be like that. And now I kind of like, my body's there. Like my mind is there. I'm just over it. I'm not the drunk that I used to be anymore. Cause I would have like a bottle of wine with dinner, you know, and, you know, before I'd have cocktails and then after I'd have cocktails and I would be shit faced. And that was how I lived my life for a long time. And I didn't have much anxiety when I was drunk, but when you're done being drunk that next morning and the hangover and the next day, oh, it's fucking horrible.
No good.
No.
Yeah, they people in bands sometimes talk about like the time that, you know, oh, that was the last time I drank, or that time made me want to stop drinking. Vinny just had his birthday, and it was someone on Headbangers Con was talking about drinking with Vinny, and there was a show one time. I used to run around with Hell Yeah when I was like 21. Mm-hmm. Like, what else is cuter? A girl from Texas, Pantera country, like lived in Dallas. Like nothing's funner than that, right? And I went shot for shot with like Vinny and Chad. There was like a show that got canceled because Bob got sick. So I went up to the venue to go drink with them anyways. And retrospectively, a 21-year-old has no business going shot for shot with Vinny Paul and Chad Gray and Mudvayne.
Yeah, they've got a tolerance level like you wouldn't believe, especially Vinny, man.
I know, like thinking back. So I had just gotten my first iPhone, and then I had it for 8 hours, and then I lost it at the venue because I got so drunk.
That's the shit I don't miss, you know, like that kind of shit I don't. Or waking up the next day and then you realize the consequences of your actions, or text messages were exchanged, and you're like, fuck. I don't
remember that
shit, man. Yeah, there's huge chunks of my life are just like, especially touring and just like on the party train, and not even like just being a shitty human, like just being a dumbass on the bus, and like they wake up the next morning, people have pictures on their cell phone. I'm like, I don't remember doing any of that shit. You know, just like wearing dumb outfits or taking I actually started a mosh pit once in the bus, and I got punished for it.
Oh my God, no! Did you really?
There's video footage somewhere. I think our old tour manager has it. Yeah. I was out drinking. You can talk about shot for shot. Brian Fair from Shadows Fall and I were out drinking on the Elaborate Just Breathing reunion tour. I found out he was having a kid, and we split a bottle of Jameson and other stuff. And both of us went back to our respective buses, cranked music, and started like moshing in the bus. Same fucking thing. And there's a video footage of the entire band and crew, well, most of the band and crew, with their shirts off, like pitting around the bus. And I apparently took a bottle and tried to smash it over the the countertop, and then they had to restrain me and chokehold me down, and my sound guy was bench pressing me, and I was giggling, and like it was a mess, a total fucking mess. And apparently I puked in the sink and clogged the sink in the bus. And the next morning I woke up, I didn't remember a single thing. And, I woke up last out of everybody, and I had a gash on my rib cage from here to here, like just completely cut open. I don't know how that happened. And I walked into the front lounge of the bus, and it was like needle on the record. Everyone just looks at me. How you doing? I'm like, what? It's like, you have cleaning duty today. And they gave me cleaning supplies, and yeah, they all made fun of me. It was like I had to clean the bus, and I just fucked up bad. And then I walk out into the venue for sound check. I see Brian Fair. He's like, dude, what the fuck happened last night? I was like, I don't know. What happened to you? He pulls up his shirt. He's got a scrape from here to here. Same exact fucking thing. We both don't remember what happened. And he's like, yeah, I went back to my bus, and apparently I started a pit in the bus. I'm like, you did too? What the fuck? What did we do? He's like, I don't know, man. Yeah, that alcohol, it's a hell of a drug.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love Brian. Brian's one of my favorite people. Brian was at the very first Headbangers Con.
He's a sweetheart. He's a good dude.
I love them. I spent like the whole weekend with them. They're my favorite people in the entire world. Talk to them all the time.
Now he's a big old hippie dad.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. So I was on the same plane with Brian, and he gets up to use the restroom, and I'm like, oh, hey, like we recognize each other from social media.
Yeah.
Through Headbangers. So I get off, and they sent the same car for us, and there wasn't room for my bag. So they put, Brian was like, oh, it's fine. So I have like a 50-pound suitcase. He's in the back, and he's holding it, and I feel so bad for him. I've never met him before. He's so sweet, so nice. The bag is like, between him and his wife, and I'm like sitting there mortified, like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, so embarrassed. And then every time the car turns, my bag falls on him.
Oh man.
And it's like 50 pounds of like hair curlers, jewelry, makeup. And I'm just in the front going, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Like it was very funny. And then since then we have, a great fucking time the entire weekend. But
you can't ask for two nicer people. Him and his wife are the sweetest human beings.
Yeah. I love Abby. Okay. So I did want to thank you. So part of anxiety, depression, it is that heavy, aggressive music and being in the pit for me. So that's what I fucking love. So thank you for what you do. Mm-hmm. And that's why I do press, just to tell you thank you, basically, and to thank you for what you do. So what's something that you haven't written about that you would like to write about?
I'm currently writing very, very slowly and very quietly about the cycles of nature. It's very heady, sort of like turn of the seasons and the cycles of the earth. It's something I'm slowly piecing together on my own, a solo sort of, I got a piano behind me. I've been playing it a lot, doing sort of, I guess, experimental goth, nature-y type stuff. And that's something that I've really never tackled and really never allowed myself to get that deep and sort of hippy dippy or spiritual or whatever people are going to say. And it's been liberating. It's been really interesting to open that part of myself up. But it's something I'm still working on. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable to share it anytime soon. But nature has been huge for me. And just blatantly talking about nature. I use it metaphorically in my lyrics, whether I'm talking about water or fire or breathing or air, like it's there. But this is going to be a little bit more obvious that I'm talking about forests and trees and mountains and, the spirit of nature and the great spirit and all these things, the energy that runs through it. So it's sort of that more like heady, I guess people would consider it hippy dippy stuff, spiritual stuff. So I'm trying to tackle that part of my brain, and it's been interesting. It's liberating, really, because I don't usually allow myself to paint outside the lines, and with this, there's no rules. It's great.
Wow, I love that. Have you ever listened to Native American music?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. On a regular basis, I sage my house at least once a week. I burn incense constantly, and I love listening to Native American flute and chanting. And I've gone to powwows up here. I actually have Native American jewelry that I wear. There is a small portion of my bloodline that is Native, through my parents finding out through, the genealogy stuff. But I don't know what it is, but I've always felt connected to the earth. And I have a very high respect for First Nation and Native American people. And anytime I come into contact, and we've played, at reservations and casinos, and I just love talking to people about the way that they see the world and the way that they lived in harmony with nature. I just have such respect for Native culture, and the music is beautiful. Native American flute is just incredible. There's some really good playlists on Spotify you can find on Native American flute, particularly. I like to blast that when I sage my house. Yeah, and one of my favorite groups is a group called Dead Can Dance, and they're sort of considered goth, but they also have world music incorporated into their sound. And there's an album called Spirit Chaser by Dead Can Dance that's a massive influence on me and my solo work and the kind of stuff that I listen to on my own,
Yeah, so actually, I've been listening to Native American music for years and years, and I'm looking on Spotify, the one I always listen to. Native American music.
Yeah, there's something about it. There's a spirit in it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I love that you listen to that too, because I've been listening to it for years and I love it.
Yeah, world music, what they call world music, just music from other countries, African music. I love hearing that stuff. I just get to a point where I've listened to the same stuff over and over, and I have to step outside of my norm of the usual rock and roll and metal and, reggae and ska and punk. Those are kind of all my go-tos. And I will purposely, lately, I've just been finding modern classical composers. And there's this guy, I've mentioned before in interviews, but he was sort of the gateway to me realizing that classical music isn't just Beethoven, Bach, all that shit that we grew up with. It's still evolving. There's still brilliant, incredible people creating classical music. And some of the chamber music is just simple violin and piano and ambient music that's just flourishes, and it's not the intense, highbrow, snooty shit you think classical music is. There's a guy named John Luther Adams who has a song called Become Ocean. It's all based on the ocean currents, and it's harp and violin and really sparse, simple classical music. And that track, Become Ocean, it's 45 minutes long. You can put it on from start to finish. It's a journey. It's a musical journey. Beautiful. I love exploring music, other types of music that is far outside of the genre of metal or rock. It can expand your mind, and I don't know, it's just beautiful.
I love that. It really is beautiful. You feel the exact same way I do about it. And it's always changing for me too. I found metal because I was so tired of rock. And then I got into death metal because I was tired of normal metal. And then I got into black metal. And then I got into folk because I want something completely different after that.
Yeah, it's great, right?
You go back and forth.
And metal can do all of that, which is amazing. That's why I love metal, because you say the word metal and people have this idea in their head, Metallica, AC/DC, but it's so much more than that. And if you're a real metalhead, you guys know, but man, some of those subgenres are incredible, right? I love some of the pagan stuff that's been coming out lately, I can't even pronounce their names, but I've been turned on to a lot of pagan folk music, and sort of still considered metal, but it's really not metal. It's just metal based. It's metal people doing pagan folk music. Love it. It's awesome.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I have a new thing to Google.
Oh, dude.
Pagan what?
Oh yeah. I'll have to send you something.
Okay. I was like, pagan what?
Yeah, off the top of my head. So there's a Germanic group. Oh, what the hell is their name? God damn it. They sing in the Germanic language too, and they dress the part. If I think
is it the Gregorian kind of thing?
No, it's not Gregorian.
I don't know.
When I think of it, I'll send it to you via the email you sent me.
Cool.
It's incredible, and they sing about the wolf, and I mean it's in a different language, but you can tell what they're talking about, and they do the whole bones and face paint, and it's just the whole thing. There's songs that are just voices and they're all chanting, and it's very dark and sort of almost like where black metal comes from, that sort of dark, cold sounding Scandinavian, Northern European thing, but it's folk music, but it's still very much attached to the earth, and like it's dark and light. Yeah. I'll try to think of the name while we're still doing this. Just terrible. My memory's terrible.
Now I know how I'm going to spend the rest of my night now. I love it. So let's ask a few show questions as we're coming to the end. So what's the one thing you thought you would never miss about playing live that you miss now?
So I've always enjoyed the interaction with the audience. It's something I've always, that's the one thing I miss over anything. But something I didn't know that I would miss is those moments when I'm in my bunk trying to sleep, and I can hear my road family, my band, and my crew laughing in the next room, having fun, telling jokes, all the shit that used to really annoy me when I was trying to sleep, because I was just like, I need to sleep, I gotta rest my voice, like just stressed out, like trying to sleep. But hearing their laughter and like them having a good time, it sounds funny, but like I miss that. I miss hearing my brothers having a good time while we're rolling, down the concrete seas to the next venue. Like there's a real piratey sort of magic to like that camaraderie that you feel with those people you spend so much time with. And I miss all of them very much so. And I know it's been a rough year for a couple of those guys. So I definitely miss just the random loud noises at night when grumpy singer's trying to sleep.
That's very cute. That was a very sweet answer. I love that.
It's true, man.
Yeah, it was really, that's why I've always thought like music people are my people. And I've always gravitated towards tour managers, lighting guys, sound guys, and like, people in the industry and like guys in bands too. But I've always felt like, these people are my people. And that just made me feel like all warm and fuzzy on the inside of like what we all love each other for.
Totally. I feel like the crew guys are like the kitchen staff at a restaurant, like the band is one thing. Sometimes bands are fun. Sometimes bands suck to hang out with. It depends who you are. And especially if you take yourself too seriously, but crew dudes are never like that. The crew dudes are like the salt of the earth human beings that oftentimes are a lot more fucking crazy than the bands are. And our crew are they're all really cool people, but some of the funniest people you ever meet in your life are going to be road crew dudes. Tour managers are all out of their goddamn minds, all of them, in one way or another. But yeah, I love them too. They're definitely my people too.
I love that. So what's one thing about each one of your bandmates that people wouldn't necessarily know?
Adam can be really quiet and very deep and very sort of melancholy at times. He's actually has moments of real sadness and melancholy on tour. Oh, puppy.
I know. Diesel. Shut
I
up,
love
Diesel.
It's great. Joel listens to like a lot of really sad, sappy, like country Americana music and stays up every single night, like listening to it. He's just an old soul that loves nursing his beer and listening to sad music. Mike D is a total artist. He's a designer and he spends a lot of his time with his head in his computer working on art projects and design work, and he just smokes weed and does design. Like that's his thing. He's a real true digital artist. He's great at what he does and he's kind of obsessed with it. Justin's extremely quiet, which I don't know if that would surprise anybody. And then when he gets drunk, he becomes a total madman, and he's funny and he's strange, and at times he freaks me out when he gets drunk. A whole other side of him comes out. He's obsessed with sports, like so obsessed that if his team loses, he will be angry for days, like in a bad mood for days. You can't even talk to him if his team loses. Like he's that much of a sport guy. It's kind of crazy. Who am I missing? Is that everybody? Yeah, Mike. Yeah. That's the band dudes. They're the side that people don't see. Yeah, they are my brothers for sure.
That's awesome. So last question, what is the best compliment you've ever received from a fan?
Anything inspirational, like, people tell me that I've helped change their way of thinking, or, it's a little uncomfortable at times when I hear that people tell me that I've helped save their lives, because I don't like really holding on to that energy, but I hear it enough that I have to just be honored and be accepting of it. And it's something that I am so grateful for, because that's what music did for me, and that's what music does for me. So I think that's the highest paid compliment I could ever get. And I hear it enough, and it's never lost on me. Sometimes it takes me off guard and I have a hard time accepting that, whether it's, you want to call it a compliment or whatever. It's hard for me sometimes to hold on to that energy, but it keeps me going. When I have times that I'm down, my girlfriend's the first to remind me, because I've had moments of sheer insecurity this past year about who I am and what I'm doing in my life. And she'll just remind me, and all those people always say to you all the time, like, snap out of it, realize what you're doing. Like, you're doing good in this world, embrace that. And as much as I struggle with that, that to me is the most important thing. And the reason why I still care and still do this is because I feel like I'm helping somehow.